Hello everyone, I'm AkeetheGreat, and today we're going to be talking about how to turn around games. So this is a super important aspect of climbing in Legends of Runeterra because, plain and simple, not every game is winnable. Um, and, even games that are winnable aren't always easy to win. And very often you'll find yourself in a situation where you are very, very unfavored. So what I'm basically going to be talking about today is how to maximize your win rate in situations where you are very unfavored to win. This is, a pretty interesting topic. Before we get into it, I just want to say, check the description below if you're interested in coaching. If you want help building a deck, want help climbing to the next rank, I would be happy to help you out. So check that out if you can. I'll just have the cards open here, and as always, I will have, I'll be taking notes here. So the first step, I already have it written down, is identify when you are losing. So, whenever you're playing a match on ladder, challenge yourself to always be thinking, am I winning or losing in this position? Sometimes it isn't clear whether you're winning or losing. There are some times when it's very, very clear that I'm winning now, I'm losing now. But what does it look like to be winning or losing in a particular position? So I'll write that down actually. What does it look like to be winning or losing in a particular position? The answer to this question is that it depends on what deck you are playing and what deck your opponent is playing. Let's say you're playing a Noxus aggro deck. Your progress towards winning the game can be gauged by how quickly you are reducing the enemy's nexus to 0 before their win condition, whatever that may be, comes online. If you're playing a something like an Ezreal deck, you can imagine that your progress towards winning the game can be tracked by how many Ezreal triggers you have, and how quickly you're able to set up the combo to have Ezreal burst the Nexus down at a particular point in the game. Say you have Fiora. Fiora's win condition is even clearer than the first two. You can track the win progress of Fiora by just seeing how many minions she's killed thus far, and you can know whether you're ahead or behind based on how fast your opponent is getting towards their win condition before your Fiora can finish the game. So it completely depends on what your win condition is and what your opponent's win condition is. So I will say depends on your win condition and your opponent's win condition. So, it's a matter of understanding, the speeds at which you're playing and your opponent is playing. It's about understanding what cards are being used to win the game. For example, Ezreal or Fiora. Those two cards will impact the game differently depending on what level up is being worked towards. These are all things to consider as you're figuring out whether you're winning a game or losing a game. So now, once you've identified that you are losing, how do you maximize your chances of winning? So that's the next question we need to answer, and really I will I'll put that up here. The answer to this is play towards the strengths of the cards in your deck. So now what does this mean? Because this doesn't make too much sense. So let's recap what we've done so far. We've been thinking the entire game, am I winning or am I losing? And then we notice that our opponent is closer to their win condition than we are to ours. So the next step is to think about what's still in our deck. So this, of course, it always depends on what deck you're playing, but depending on what's in your deck, you want to be setting up the situation on board or in your hand such that if you draw into something that can win you the game, that you will, actually be able to close things out. So that, once again, that still doesn't sound necessarily super clear. I think it's best demonstrated through an example. So, a few seasons ago, Burn Aggro was a very, very popular deck because it was a top-tier strategy. The burn tools that were given to Noxus, like Imperial Demolitionist and Crimson Disciple, were astounding burn tools before Disciple got nerfed, and Demolitionist is still an amazing Noxus burn tool. And when I was playing the deck, I found that I was in a position where I was against a slower deck, and that deck was, taking down my my aggro tools, and I didn't have enough burn to close out the game, and I was left with only one card in hand, and that card was a Crimson Disciple, and then my opponent had just a bunch of stuff out on the board, and it was about to be their turn to attack, and they were going to close out the game. But the catch is that they only had 3 health left, and I had to basically do some math. So, and of course, you're doing some sort of pseudo math all the time in Legends of Runeterra, but a lot of the times it's very rough math. So, I was just thinking about, okay, well, what's in my deck? My opponent has 3 health, so no matter what, I'm going to need something that does 3 or more damage. And Decimate won't work because Decimate is at slow speed, and I'm drawing a card next turn, and my opponent is most likely going to open attack. So I likely won't get a chance to play a Decimate even if I draw it. So I have to think about, okay, what is a fast speed thing that will deal 3 damage to the opponent's Nexus? And I had 2 types of cards in the deck that could do that. The first one was Get Excited. Get Excited requires you to discard a card to deal 3 to anything. It's an amazing card for burn decks and even for some control decks. But my version of the deck was only running 2 copies of this card. The other one that I had was Noxian Fervor. Noxian Fervor allows you to deal 3 to an ally, to deal 3 to anything, in our case the Nexus. So I was faced with a dilemma. I had my Crimson Disciple in hand. I quickly was able to realize that hitting the opponent's Nexus for 3 was going to be the only way I was going to win, and those 2 cards were the only ways that I could win the game. So the question became, do I play my Crimson Disciple or do I leave it in my hand? And let me tell you why the reason is that I was facing that particular dilemma. Get Excited requires you to discard a card from hand, whereas Noxian Fervor requires you to deal damage to a minion on the field. If I were to draw into one of those 2 cards next turn, my opponent would straight up open attack, and I wouldn't have time to play the minion before the attack if I were to draw Noxian Fervor. So I had to make a decision here and now. Was I going to play the card? Was I going to play Crimson Disciple, hoping that I draw Noxian Fervor next turn? Or was I going to keep it in hand, hoping that I draw Get Excited? And I realized I have two Noxian Fervors in the deck, and one Get Excited left, because I had used one Get Excited already and one Noxian Fervor already. So I play the Crimson Disciple. Next turn, lo and behold, I draw the Noxian Fervor, and I win the game. Now, of course, this is kind of a hyperbolic situation, even though it actually happened to me. But it's a perfect demonstration of the type of reasoning you should be doing when you are losing. You have to be thinking about what's in your deck, and what's in your hand, and what's on the field, so that you can set up for the best case scenario. If you're losing, you have to take risks. And that's the next thing, actually. But you have to be thinking about, what are the cards in your deck, and how can they potentially set you up for a best case scenario in which you win the game. And here's the next thing, and it's quite related to the first one, and I just mentioned it a second ago, which is take risks. So of course, playing towards the strengths of the cards in your deck is really taking a risk. But just more generally, you have to be taking a risk. If you have a Make It Rain and they have a board full of minions and they have 1 health left on the Nexus, use that Make It Rain, trying to hit their Nexus and give yourself the best shot at winning the game, even if that means doing something that would likely be against the odds. There is no such thing as playing safe when you are losing, because of the fact that if you continue to play safe while you're losing, nothing will improve. And if you take a risk, well, if that risk doesn't pay off for you, you were losing anyway. And if the risk does pay off for you, well, then you just won a game that you should have lost. So, of course, a lot of these things are very abstract, but a lot of playing card games is an abstract process. So, taking risks is related to what we've been talking about, but also equally important. And, just a general rule of thumb for playing from behind. So that's sort of all I have to say on this subject, but I hope that this guide was helpful. Again, if you want to rank up, if you want help learning this new expansion, if you want help climbing on ladder, check the link in the description below for some coaching help, and thanks so much.